Hello, welcome to Scare Republic, where we have the scariest stories and relaxing soothing sounds for relaxation. Please subscribe for more. Chapter 1. The arrival. The van rolled up the serpentine path through black pines and rust-colored soil. Eleanor Voss clutched her coat tight against the February chill as Lachlan Asylum came into view, a brutalist monolith of steel, stone, and shuttered windows. It loomed atop a hill like a forgotten god, blind and watching. She had read the case files, knew the patient counts, memorized the hallways. But Lachlan was something else in person. The air tasted older here, like dust and moth wings. The shadows under the trees didn't seem to move with the light, and the silence that hung over the grounds was not peace, but dormancy, like something waiting to be stirred. The gates creaked open without anyone touching them. The driver didn't speak. Eleanor stepped out alone. Her breath fogged the air, vanishing into a cold so deep it seemed to echo up from the soil. The receptionist, a wan woman named Ada, gave her a clipboard without speaking. Her eyes never met Eleanor's. The silence that followed was dense, oppressive, as if words themselves refused to echo. The air carried the scent of antiseptic and something fainter, like mildew and ashes. The elevator groaned as it took her to the third floor. A whisper of air brushed her neck as the doors opened, but the hallway beyond was still. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows over peeling paint and institutional gray. A single water stain on the ceiling resembled an eye. Dr. Rusk greeted her at the nurse's station. His handshake was dry and limp, his skin too cool. "You'll be shadowing patient #537-9 first. Marcus Thorne." Rusk didn't answer, only pointed to room 3A. Inside was a man with hollow eyes, sitting cross-legged in a padded room, staring into a corner. When she entered, his head snapped toward her. "You're late," he whispered. "I don't believe we've met." "We have." In the mirror. The light in the corner of the room flickered once. Eleanor felt a pulse behind her eyes, and for a moment, she thought she saw someone else standing behind her reflection in the glass. Chapter 2. Borrowed Faces. Dr. Voss kept a journal her entire career. Her first week at Lachlan filled an entire notebook. She labeled the entries clinically, but the tone deteriorated quickly from professional to frantic. Entry 1, "My reflection blinked before I did." Entry 2, "Marcus speaks in riddles. But he knows things about me he shouldn't." Birthday. Hometown. My sister's name. Entry 3, "I walked past a mirror in 3B. My reflection looked older. Not tired. Just worn." The staff, too, seemed uneasy. Nurse Emery Lynn avoided all reflective surfaces, covering them with surgical drapes. She claimed the humming in corridor 3B was a warning. The hum seemed to shift pitch when certain people passed by. Others said they heard whispering beneath it. One night, Emery vanished. Her shoes were found outside room 3A. Her keycard was inside Marcus's cell. Surveillance footage showed her standing before the mirror for 11 minutes. Then static. Then nothing. When asked, Marcus only smiled. She forgot which side she was on. Claire Orman, a patient with eidetic memory, began correcting the staff, pointing out physical differences, small ones. A freckle missing. A voice pitched too low. A gesture used by the wrong hand. "You're not my nurse," she told Ada. "You borrowed her skin, but not her voice." Ada was later found sitting catatonic in the laundry room, whispering, "He wears my skin now." Dr. Voss's nightmares worsened. She dreamt of endless white corridors and hands tapping from the inside of mirrors. Her sleepwalking increased. She woke once in the janitor's closet, cradling an empty mirror frame. One morning, she found the following scrawled across her office wall: "You were his first." Chapter 3. The ones who watched surveillance logs showed anomalies, reflections moving independently of their sources. One video showed Dr. Voss leaving her office at 2:03 a.m., twice. Once in person, once in reflection. Dr. Rusk dismissed the footage as glitches. But others were not convinced. He began locking his office door during the day and leaving it open at night. Luca, a mute child patient, began drawing faceless figures crowding the halls. One drawing showed Dr. Voss with her face crossed out, standing beside a mirror labeled "The Borrower." The figures were always watching, never blinking. Always just beyond the edge of a doorway. Voss confronted Marcus again. "Who is the borrower?" Marcus laughed, deep and wet. "He's what's left when you forget who you are." Patients began behaving like staff. Emery Klein took attendance in the dining hall. Claire led group therapy. Dr. Min disappeared. His replacement, Dr. Eldred, had no credentials, but no one noticed. When asked, people referred to him by different names. Nobody could describe his face. Mirrors were removed, covered, hidden, but it didn't matter. Reflection found new ways. Water. Metal. Eyes. One night, Luca wrote his first sentence. He says, "I was his once. And I'm his again." Chapter 4. The hollow room's entire wings began to shift. Maps no longer matched the hallways. Rooms folded inward or led to dead ends. One hallway looped back onto itself in impossible geometry. The east stairwell sometimes led down to the boiler room, other times to a bricked-up wall. Patients disappeared in front of staff. Lights flickered as the air grew thick. Whispering began in unused rooms. Nurse Lynn returned, but she didn't speak. Didn't blink. Walked the halls until a mirror shattered near her, and she collapsed in convulsions. Her pulse stuttered in mirror light. The next day, she was gone again. Dr. Voss lost time, hours at first, then days. Her journals showed entries in a different hand. Her voice recorder picked up her own voice asking questions she never remembered asking. She wrote, "I think I'm not me anymore. But she remembers how I used to sound." Claire Orman escaped her room and smeared her blood on every reflective surface she could find. Her final message, on the main hallway mirror: "Don't trust the ones who smile too quickly. They've forgotten how." Dr. Rusk began speaking in Latin, repeating the phrase, "Memoria oblitum mutat facium." Memory forgotten changes the face. He began referring to Eleanor as someone named Delilah. One night, Eleanor awoke standing before the mirror in room 3A. Her reflection was smiling. She wasn't. Chapter 5. The last switch. The power failed at 3:03 a.m. In darkness, the asylum screamed. Not in voice, but in sound. Walls groaned. Glass shattered. Doors slammed and locks clicked open. Patients howled in chorus, as if orchestrated. Eleanor crawled through the halls by emergency lights, watching as shadows danced where no people stood. Lights flickered in impossible patterns. Time slowed in some rooms, reversed in others. Marcus stood in room 3A, surrounded by glass shards. Time to switch, he whispered. Claire hung from a ceiling pipe in corridor 2B, her final words scratched on her wall, "The face I wear isn't mine." Dr. Rusk was found rocking in his office, chanting, "He remembers your shape, not your name." Eleanor reached her office and saw her reflection staring at her. It moved before she did. It mouthed something. "You were always the reflection." The next morning, Lachlan was silent. Empty. No patients. No staff. Only flickering lights and dust motes. Every mirror intact. Every window opaque. In room 3A, a woman in a lab coat stood inside the glass, pressing both palms to the surface. Her eyes were wide. Her mouth screamed. But no sound came. Etched into the glass, "He remembers your shape. Not your name." Chapter 6. The reflection room. She found it by accident, or perhaps it found her. The old blueprints of Lachlan showed a storage sub-basement beneath the eastern wing, but the door had long been sealed. One night, after following a sound like dripping water that led nowhere, Eleanor came across a narrow stairwell behind a boiler access hatch. The path twisted downward in a way that defied architectural sense. At the bottom was a door of polished obsidian glass. Her reflection was distorted, stretched thin and tall, but grinning wide. Inside was a chamber of mirrors. Floor to ceiling. Angled, curved, convex and concave. They pulsed faintly with light from no source. But none of them reflected her. Instead, she saw 100 versions of herself. Some crying. Some laughing. One was covered in blood. One stood in a straitjacket. Another was ancient and frail, mouthing a name she couldn't hear. All of them looked at her. None mirrored her movement. In the center of the room was a chair. Strapped to it was a body. Emily Lynn. Except her eyes had been replaced with mirrored discs. A voice echoed in the room, not spoken aloud, but vibrating from the mirrors themselves. "Which one are you today?" The Eleanor in the farthest mirror walked away from her reflection. Behind the glass, that version stepped back into darkness and vanished. A wind stirred. Cold and wet, though there were no vents. A phrase appeared etched across the nearest mirror, "Which you gets to leave." Chapter 7. The archivist beneath the reflection room was something older. She followed the black-veined staircase deeper, the air thickening until her breath fogged in front of her. What lay below wasn't part of any map, digital or paper. Carved into stone was an archway covered in mirrored rooms that shimmered when her flashlight passed over them. A chamber opened beyond, filled with books. Thousands of them. Journals stacked floor to ceiling, some with spines still wet. Pages rustled though there was no wind. And at the center, a man in a white coat without a face. The archivist. He moved like memory, familiar, but unreachable. As Eleanor stepped closer, the mirrors around the chamber flickered with her face at different ages, in different uniforms. Some bore scars she didn't have. Some were wearing patient gowns. The archivist turned to her and held out a journal. Her name was on the cover. Inside were entries she never wrote. Descriptions of events yet to happen. "You've been here many times," the faceless voice said. "Who are you?" she asked. He tilted his head. "The one who remembers when you forget." She opened to the final page. It was blank, except for one line, "The switch is nearly complete." When she looked up, the archivist was gone. Only his reflection remained in the glass panel of the projector. Chapter 8. The mirror doctrine leaks past, or seemed to. Time unraveled in Lapland. Clocks disagreed. Calendars looped. Snow fell in one wing while another baked in humid summer. Eleanor began collecting fragments, notes, files, and graffiti left by staff who no longer existed. A doctrine emerged. Mirrors weren't just reflective. They were recording, observing, sometimes intervening. The original architect of Lachlan, Dr. Ilias Corwin, had been a physicist before he turned to memory work. He believed that reflections were echoes of the soul, trapped iterations of choice. He built Lachlan to contain them. He failed. The mirrors fed on forgetfulness, on misremembered names, on moments lost to trauma. Every lost memory became a doorway. Reflection is only safe when the self is whole. One note read. But Eleanor's self wasn't whole. Hadn't been since she arrived. She no longer remembered her mother's face. She dreamed of herself screaming behind glass. Of Eleanor watching her own death, again and again, from the wrong side. When she awoke, there were new photos in the patient files, photos of her, under different names. The last entry in Corwin's journal, smudged and faint, read, "They don't become you. You become them." Chapter 9. The names beneath names had power. Eleanor realized this as they began to vanish from the walls. Plaques scraped blank. ID badges erased. Files overwritten with gibberish. The moment a name was forgotten, something else took residence. Claire's records now listed her as Subject 33B. No surname. No birthday. When Eleanor asked her who she was, Claire smiled and whispered, "I'm whoever they need." Even Eleanor's own ID card changed, day to day. Sometimes she was Voss. Other times Dell. Once, it simply read, "Memory Host." In the archives, she found the original staff roster. She counted 13 names that had been completely erased, including her own. Behind a false wall in the medical wing, she found what looked like a morgue drawer, but the inside was lined in glass. As if something was meant to be preserved, not buried. A whisper from inside said her name. But it wasn't her voice. The reflection in the glass had a new name stitched onto its coat, Dr. Eleanor Voss. But behind him, her reflection watched her with growing hunger. Chapter 10. Through the looking glass the reflection smiled. Eleanor didn't. Behind dark rust, the glass rippled like water. A pale hand reached through, pulling him inside with a sound like cracking ice. He didn't scream. He simply folded. Her office went still. The mirror on the wall glowed faintly, its surface trembling. She approached it. Her reflection stood perfectly still, then raised its hand and pointed behind her. She turned. Marcus stood there, eyes wide, bleeding from his palms where he'd gripped broken glass. "It's almost over," he whispered. "Then what happens?" He shook his head. "Then it begins." The lights overhead exploded. The world ticked. Eleanor stumbled into the mirror. And through it. The asylum was quiet. No buzzing lights. No screams. No Marcus. No Claire. No Dr. Rusk. Only Eleanor, standing in the center of the reflection room. All the mirrors intact. She saw herself in each one. But none of them moved. A voice behind her, her own voice, said, "It chose you. It always does." She turned. Her reflection stood outside the glass, looking in. "What am I now?" Eleanor asked. The other her smiled gently. "You're the memory that had nowhere left to go." The lights dimmed. The mirrors hummed. And Lachlan Asylum, once again, began to remember.